Heyo. On today's pod, I got the pleasure of talking with Jonathan Miller, CEO at Chiron Medical Technologies. We talked through his experience at previous startups, one that was a travel app that ended up pivoting toward a B2B solution, actually. So he shares what he learned about customer acquisition costs in that B2B pivot, the struggle of transitioning to a CEO when all of his roles before that were CTO roles, and the shortage of physicians and how his AI product is filling that gap. Now, John has co-authored multiple patents that advance fields like traveler inference, multi-attribute platforms, natural language fulfillment, and integrated medical systems. As the primary inventor of the patent governing his current startup, Chiron Medical Technology, he leads the company in development of its proprietary AI-driven clinical decision support tools. Now, another quick note. If you like this content, if you want more of these podcasts, you can now go to app.fanbravo.com/DanGemini. And you can send me a tip, a little $5 tip to say thanks. Also, this is a shameless plug, you guys, because we, Gemini, are actively helping FanBravo build out their fan-to-creator platform. So I'm excited about it. It's a great platform, and I would love for you to check it out and just let us know what you think also. All right, enough of that. This is episode 19 of How Not to Build. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I really look forward to our conversation. And the first question that I always ask, what are you glad about today? What's good in Jonathan's life?
I'm in reasonably good health, and I'm in Texas, which has been experiencing 82-degree weather instead of like -4. Like some of my relatives out east, there aren't any iguanas falling from trees because they're frozen. So, we're in February. And as somebody who immigrated from Canada, I appreciate a winter where it's 80 degrees outside.
Good. I'm glad you can appreciate that. That is, as someone who immigrated from Washington State, where it's just, in the winter, it's like, even if it wasn't cold, it's just dark. And at least down here, it might be cold, but the sun is shining. And like, that just makes me want to get out of bed. Good stuff, man.
Right back at you, Dan. What are you happy for today?
Oh, you're like only one of the probably 2 guests in the last 20 that have asked me that. What am I glad about today? 2025 was a down year business-wise. Things got really slow. Things got dicey. And now, in this very moment, I'm having somewhat of the opposite problem, where there's a couple of projects coming in, and I'm like up to my eyeballs trying to manage everything, which is tempting to complain, right? It's tempting to be like, why can't people, help me out a little more? The reality is, man, like, I'm just grateful to be kind of on the other side of 2025. I know some people are skeptical about the economy in 26. At least from my perspective, I'm actually very optimistic at this point in time. And I think that things are going to continue moving in the right direction, and we'll see how it shakes out. But right now I'm just thankful for where I am now as opposed to where I was last year.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is there anything, as you look at 2025, that you're anxious about?
I mean, am I anxious about going forward? From a business perspective or the economy? Not particularly. There are a couple of industries that just seem to be immune from a lot of the vicissitudes of the market. Travel is one of them. Healthcare is another one of them. AI is definitely in a boom. And when you intersect things like AI and healthcare from an industry perspective, you're not terribly worried. You have other worries, right? Like everybody and their uncles in bed with, trying to get into the market ahead of you. So, you've got other pressures. The segments of the industries that are going to probably be struggling in the year to come don't really impact me too much.
It's a good place to be. What would you say? I know I'm kind of, well, actually, maybe I'll write that down for later. Everybody talks about moats. Maybe I'll ask you what you think your moat is. But we'll get to that later. Is there anything that you are particularly hopeful about? I mean, I know you mentioned kind of the segment that you're in and some of the stability that might be there, even with all the technology changes. But anything else that you're really looking forward to?
What are you looking forward to? I don't know. Talking to an entrepreneur who's like at the beginning stages of the startup, I mean, looking forward to, hitting it out of the park, right? Like, not being, what's the one above a unicorn now? Like, there's a new name.
Is there a new one? Oh, no.
There's a new one because apparently there are too many unicorns out there. So they had to come up with like an even more exclusive like category of startup business.
A demigod or something?
I don't know, but I mean, I'm very hopeful for the work that I'm in. I mean, that's really great. I think that there are some amazing technologies that are coming out that will really improve lives in the health space. We can maybe get into this a little bit later, but I was at JP Morgan Pitch Force event, not participating, just in the audience, and they were talking about new technologies to treat Alzheimer's and to treat neurological conditions. They have amazing impacts, almost like stalling the progression of disease. Drug discovery stuff that's happening right now. I got a good friend of mine in Colorado who's doing all kinds of interesting work there. And I think that the future for how we live, quality of life, and how that gets extended is just like we're at the beginning of an amazing boom. So I'm very, very hopeful for
Mm.
that.
Do you think do you think that's going to be hindered at all by, I mean, when I think of like the medical tech industry, even though it is tech, it is still medical. Things move slower. There's a lot more red tape to get through and all that. I mean, do you feel like, just in general, do you feel like those things are on a faster timeline than before? Or is it still, even though the technology might be there, it might take 10 years to trickle down to, being paid for on my insurance?
I think it's going faster. Um, definitely under this administration, a lot of the hurdles are getting cut, um, for good or for ill. I mean,
We'll
I'm not
find
going to have
out
an
10 years
opinion
from
on
now.
that, but I think the pace of everything is just accelerating, generally speaking. So I don't anticipate that it's going to be, too delayed. But at the same time, like you are dealing with medical devices, you're going to be implanting things into people, you're going to be giving them drugs, you're going to be giving them recommendations on treatments. Like that has to be pretty robust. We have the guardrails for a reason.
And I feel like most people, if it came down to the choice of, live another 50 years or, and grow a tail, they'd probably opt to go ahead and live 50 years with a tail, if the drugs aren't fully vetted and they're going to keep them alive, but maybe with some side effects.
Yeah,
Hopefully
trade-offs,
not.
right?
Hopefully not.
One of the things you learn in business school, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs.
Yeah, that's right. OS genius. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. Well, let's talk about, I mean, we're going to get into what you're currently working on, um, which I think is pretty interesting. And I think it's a perfect, at least the last time we talked about it, I think it's a really good application of AI. But before that, I want to kind of go through, because this isn't your first rodeo. You were the CTO at a company that did end up exiting. And so I want to walk through that a little bit and kind of chat about that experience and some of the lessons you learned that, apply to how you're approaching your current startup. So you were CTO at, I'm probably not going to say this right, Amgene?
Close enough.
Okay. How do you pronounce it?
Amgen. I mean, it's not actually a
Amgen.
real word. Newsflash, I'm a mathematician by training, not marketing or advertising. So coming up with names of company was challenging. Um, and there was a reason for this, but we basically took the word enigma and we spelled it backwards, and that turned into Amgen.
Mm.
And then we kind of pronounced it like the Japanese pronounced the word pilot, engine, because it was in the travel space. So we kind of went with Amgen. With then everyone confused us with a massive pharmaceutical company out of California, of course, but very, very different.
Okay. So
Yeah, learned some
I
lessons,
like
got
that.
some gray
I'm kind
hairs
of
from
like you,
that.
where I probably think much too deeply about the naming of things, probably. But to me, it's like, well, if I'm gonna do something, right? I mean, the name is important, so I want it to make sense and to fit. Um, so the travel app. So I guess take us through, like, how did you get started as a CTO on that travel app, and maybe also just paint broadly what that travel app did.
Sure. Uh, this is always an interesting place of where I start because to really understand it, you really got to go back to my university days where I was doing a double math major at the Fields Institute of Mathematics, University of Toronto. Very difficult program, pure math specialist program. We had like a 9 to 5 attrition rate. Like it was really,
Oh,
we had a
wow.
nice big atrium first year, and then by the time we got to the second semester, we were stuck in the basement of some social sciences building with 15 people that you knew for the next 5 years. And there we learned a lot of abstract mathematics, and I did a lot of philosophy. So my minor was in philosophy. And then when I did history of Western philosophy, I learned about Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. We did that. We did the prequel to it. I can't pronounce the word in Latin. And there was an epistemology that came out of that, which is synthetic a priori. truths, and all mathematics is a synthetic a priori truth. We can get into the weeds on that, but basically, when you're born, you know that 5 plus 7 is not 5, and it's not 7. It's something else.
Okay.
You need to experience it to figure out what it is. We don't know the whole world a priori, but those experiences are mapped against those structures. So you're basically already wired to get in information from the world. And that basically created a worldview around how intelligence, like how do we know what we know, how intelligence ought to work. And when I say terrible, I mean terrible travel experience happened. Like, we need to be able to do this better, and we need to create a computer that can automate all of this stuff. How that would be constructed falls back on that mathematical precept, or
Okay.
that philosophical precept, maybe.
Okay.
So I'm driving to my sister's graduation in Rutgers, New Jersey. She got a PhD in operations research. We're all very, very proud. So what do families do? They hop in the car. So we're in Toronto at the time. I'm riding shotgun. My father's driving. We've got my mother in the back. My aunt from South Africa was visiting. And we go pick up my sister, and we do the celebration, and everything's great. And she drives back with us. So we've got 3 girls in the back, 2 of us in the front. And my family, like most families on a road trip, you kind of wish you had a bigger car, or maybe 3 separate ones in convoy, because we don't travel well together.
Okay.
Pretty sure we nearly killed each other on that road trip. And we're driving through, and I remember this because it was that bad. We're driving through Scranton, Pennsylvania on the way back up north. And we're like, okay, we can't take it anymore. We need to stop, and we need like to go into our separate rooms. So we needed 2 hotel rooms for 5 people
Okay.
in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And now this is like 2008.
Okay.
So what are we on, 3G then? Maybe, I don't know. But our phones were a lot slower than they are now.
Right.
And like first generation iPhones. For all you kids out there, it was a lot slower than we have it now. So you have to wait for pages to load and all kinds of things. And I'm trying to find hotels, and I'm like calling them up. Do you have availability? No. It turns out every college in the country was graduating that weekend. We couldn't find a spot.
No, of course.
So that was our experience, which became the necessity, which was the mother of invention.
Okay.
And I'm like, you
Okay.
know what? I don't want to do this. What I want to be able to do is tell my phone that we have 5 people, we need 2 rooms, 4 queen beds, whatever the case is, and a pull-out couch, and just book it, and not have to do this
And so
business.
this was like Expedia wasn't a thing, or maybe it was, but it didn't have those specific parameters, or what?
There weren't really a lot of apps yet. So you would have to go onto the Expedia website, and they weren't really coded for mobile devices.
Okay.
Remember, we're going back in time a little bit here.
Yep.
But yes, you could have gone on to Expedia and click down, drop down menus, and try to do all that. But doing that on your phone, driving through the hills of Pennsylvania, where your cell service is a little bit sketchy, by the time you would have found it, you would have been past it by 40 miles.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So that was the kernel of the idea, is like, there's no reason this needs to be this hard. And you've got this, I mean, your whole family sounds like a pretty intelligent family. You've got a PhD, you've got your philosophical brain at work, and you're thinking like, there's a simple math. And in your mind, there's simple math that can solve this. What in the world?
At that point, I didn't quite know. Like, so this was probably, I was maybe first year university for this, right? So I
Okay.
hadn't really done well in my studies, but I'm like, this sucks. There's got to be a better way. And then as I go through
Yeah.
my studies and I learned about epistemology, and we started doing some other things, topological spaces, abstract algebra. I'm like, you know what? There's some of these concepts that I can piece together into a system that'll actually do the thing that really sucked a couple of years ago. So how I came about being the CTO at Amgen was I founded the company, gave myself a really, really easy job interview, decided that I was qualified, hired myself, and became the CTO. I mean,
Sounded like a good title at the time.
I was a 3rd-year college student, right? So I wasn't going to, try to be the CEO or anything like that. I roped in my father to run the company because he had done it a few times in the past. And my sister, who had done her PhD in portfolio risk optimization, who would normally have gone to work at the banks, were still recovering and reeling from the financial crash. They weren't really hiring. So we kind of made a small little family business, and decided to to make a go at this travel application. And we filed a series of patents. One of my responsibilities and duties was managing an intellectual property portfolio. Some of them are over there.
Hey, look at that, hanging up on
And
the wall.
hanging up on the wall.
And you're a true Texan now, because I see the Longhorns up there too on one of those frames.
Oh, we'll get to that. So yeah, that's how I became. That's how we got started. And
Okay, so you got started, and you had this idea, should be better, taking a very mathematical engineering approach to the problem. I mean, I guess how long, once you guys formed, filed some patents, started building, how long from like the period of, hey, we're going to start building this, to basically MVP? Like, this is actually working, and it's do you have people interested in this from the beginning? Like, did you guys have a exit plan like day one, or was it just, we're just going to start building a solution to the problem and see where it goes?
so we were starting to build a consumer application. That was our initial goal when we started out. And this would have been 2012, 2011. So there were a few technical hurdles still to overcome, and I would sort of break that into a couple of phases. The first was the core technology itself. That is, how do you build an AI travel agent? And I would say that it wasn't an engineering problem; it was a systems theoretical, and that is
So
because yeah, you
go
had
ahead.
a
Sorry.
no, sorry, no, sorry. We'll blame it on the internet lens, which doesn't exist, by the way. Nobody needs to know that. But you had a lot of really smart engineers at some of the most prestigious institutions in the world. Like, you have a lot of really, really smart people, but they have a set of training in terms of tools and an approach to the world, where everything's a nail, right? And they have their hammer, right? And that sort of limits their ability to innovate particular types of solutions. So at the time, okay, think through what a travel agent does, right? You get on the phone with one, or you send them an email. They listen to your story. They parse out the relevant information. They interpret it. They create an itinerary for you, and then they find and research all of the available flights, hotels, and activities that are feasible inside of that itinerary. And that takes a human being. If it's a simple itinerary, it could take them an hour. If it's a complicated one, it could take them a week. So I mean, like, it's a complicated problem. So you have a natural language component. You have to understand what the thing is. You have to represent that in a way that you can then schedule. You have a million or tens of millions of options that you need to reduce down to like the 4 or 5 that a consumer or business would actually be interested in purchasing. So there's like a lot of stuff that you have to be able to build to make this product work. It's not just one technology. It's not a widget, right? And then you need to see, well, what are the tools that are congruent to solving that problem? And that's where the systems theory comes in. Because if you were to take a look at the only existing natural language parser on the market at the time, and the best one, I think there weren't any on the market at the time. We'll get into that. There's a really funny story about chat boxes in a moment, or chatbots, I should say. But you had the Stanford parser, which represented the pinnacle of parsing technology at the time. And if you put in more than 300 characters, the computation behind it would be so immense that it blows up. And if you put commas and periods in the wrong place, like, it's an incredibly fragile thing. And that's because semantic parsing is a very mathematically complicated problem. It's actually what we call NP complete, which is the hardest classification of problem that you have.
And NP complete.
Yes.
Okay.
Don't ask me right now to define what NP is, because
for the sake of our audience, I will stay away from that.
It's been 15 years. I don't even remember. I just know that it's a very complicated, the most complicated class of problem. And basically what it means is that one way that you can think about it is that the more words or the more elements in it you have, like, it doesn't, the processing compute doesn't scale linearly, it scales exponentially, right? So the time to solve, 10 is not double 20, it's a x to the n, right?
Right.
So it becomes really, really hard the more you have. So you can't just apply those tools. You needed to come up with a different way of doing it. You needed to say, no, that structure is not going to work. I need a different methodology. And what we did is we filed the patents on that methodology in travel, which is basically say, okay, actually, we're going to first create the morphological framework or the referential framework, which in travel was a network itinerary, right? We need to be able to represent this as a graph. And then we need to be able to find all the ways that you can say that you want to go from A to B and map it against that. So we're hunting for those relationships in the parsing technology, and all that's published information.
Mm.
Like
Okay. Yeah.
the patents are published, right? You could read
Yeah.
the methods if you want to.
Yeah.
Um,
I read all of them in preparation for this podcast.
I'm sure, and I'll happily explain them to you if we have about 5 hours.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But yeah, so you had this different approach, which is a systems theoretical approach, and this was something that my father brought to the table and that he inculcated his kids with. And it's really, really fun when you think about the impacts that has.
Mm.
You have so many really smart people in really complicated industries that are using the tools of the trade, right? The paradigm technology to solve a particular problem. I mean, if you fly an airline today, the route that you fly, the airplane that you're on, the crew that flies it, the price that you pay for that ticket is all done within your programming, digital programming optimization methods.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes them 12 to 16 weeks to come up with a schedule because they're looking for optimality. And as soon as the coffee machine breaks on an airplane, or there's a snowstorm, or the president flies into someplace, that schedule goes out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the consequences of that every time that there's a hiccup somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to actually say, no, we're not going to do an optimization problem, we're going to apply a different mathematics that's congruent to the complexity class that you're trying to solve. So in this case, instead of doing linear programming, you do dynamic programming or adaptive dynamic programming. You take that scheduling problem from 12 weeks to 12 minutes. And then you can just run a million of those and come up with a more optimal solution in terms of your revenue situation than if you were to go through the Ford algorithm of a linear programming method. And that's what mathematics can do. And I saw that in the commercial airline space. And I was just like, that's amazing. I want to learn more about that. And that's why I went into math. And then I'm like, hey, the natural language parsing problem is really, really complicated. Everyone's using the wrong tool. Why don't we do it this way? And we were able to build a core technology natural language parser that can build a network itinerary or representation of any travel request, some of them ludicrously complicated, in about 15 milliseconds.
15 mil. And to remind everybody, I mean, this is, the reason I almost interrupted you earlier is because this is all happening in 2012 is when this started. So
we had that done in 6 months.
You had that done in 6 months. Thank you. That's what I was thinking in my brain, because you mentioned we were doing AI in 2012. And I was going to say, really though, I mean, of course I know your story, but yeah, like you guys were legitimately taking, the NLPs of the day, mixing that in, taking a completely different approach to, unlike Expedia, where it really is just simple, queries in a database, a 2-room match on a column. You guys were taking a fundamentally different approach to even how you build that data, how you create that network so that you can apply a particular algorithm. I'm trying to kind of summarize what you're saying in simple terms that I can understand. Organize the data in a certain way to where you can approach it with a certain solution that allowed you to solve these complex problems in 15 milliseconds. And was that actually, you mentioned the consumer app. I mean, was that actually like me typing natural language into a text box and it was taking that and building the itinerary in 15 milliseconds?
Yep.
So 2012, even if I'm generous, 2013, you guys had ChatGPT for that domain space, essentially.
It was better than ChatGPT. I mean, ChatGPT, I mean, when if you type in a travel request, I mean, it might check that the dates are all aligned, so you don't, travel back in time when you're flying forward, right?
Yeah.
But it has no idea what content's out there. The flights that it give you may have existed in 1970. They might be hallucinations that never existed at all. There's no availability or feasibility in the schedule, right? There might be a connection time of like 10 minutes and you have to go, if you're landing in Atlanta, you're screwed. Excuse my language. So all of that was queued into it. So the reason that you had to build that network representation from the natural language request, because then you had to schedule it. And you had to say, well, okay, what's what? So you have to then go get the content and find out, well, what do we have, right? How many flights do we have? How many hotels? How many combinations of those are there? There's tens of thousands of them for even the simplest of things. Excuse me. So then what combination of that do you want compared to what has the user specified as the preference? And then
Wow.
what are your alternatives going to be? And so you go onto Expedia today and you type in, you fill in your little drop boxes, which haven't changed in 30 years. And I know on good authority that they tried to do a natural language query kind of thing like we had built, and we don't see it. So we can only surmise they gave up on it. And who knows how much they spent on developing that one.
Yeah.
But then they have like these calendars, right? And you can just sort of like say, well, my dates are flexible. I'm going to change, click on this date and, go on a different time. Well, that you can't really do that when you have a complicated interdependent, network, especially if you're meeting somebody or
Mm,
you're coming from different cities or there's any sort of dependencies that are tied to that. Also, the cost may be totally out of whack. Sure,
mm,
you might save $50 on the flight, but you're going to have to spend another $200 on an extra night for a hotel. There are all kinds of interesting sort of things like that. So you had your best case itinerary that you would book, and this was a consumer choice model. And we had your credit card spend and profile information about you. Are you a leisure traveler? Are you a business traveler? And this would all go towards what content we would actually display to you. But if you wanted to change your flight, the alternatives that we had reached out for you, that you could say, actually, I want to take this one, all of them preserved the integrity of the itinerary.
mm,
So you didn't have to worry about if you had booked a trip and then you needed to make a change for some reason,
mm-hmm.
you weren't going to completely mess everything up. And we had all kinds of things. It was amazing. So you could,
Wow.
you can go from A to B. You can then just to say, you know what, actually, I want to go on this like 5-city tour. I'm going to have my friends visit me from all over the world. We're going to meet in the middle. And actually, you know what, instead of going here, let's actually change the city to another one. Let's introduce another leg to our journey. We able to
Mm-hmm.
do all of this stuff. It was actually really quite fun. Um,
So then, but I mean, it sounds amazing, right? Sounds like a unicorn or whatever the kids are calling it these days. What, I guess, like fast forward, like you guys were focused on the consumer app. Did that take off? Did you get a million users? Where did that sort of end uh, for that startup?
so what happened there is we ended up pivoting into B2B. And the reason, what would happen is that we built this amazing technology that could do all of this stuff. And we had the most simple user interface you can imagine. It was a chat box
Mm-hmm.
and it said, tell us where you want to go. And we put it up on the App Store. Apple loved it. I don't even know if I can actually say this, but I mean, we were invited to Cupertino. This was probably 2014. We met with the Apple Store. We were featured as the most favored North American travel app. We met none of their criteria. And the number one
Awesome.
consumer feedback we got was, where are the drop down boxes? Like, how do I use this thing?
Where's the horse
There's a
for this
text
book?
box,
Yeah.
right? Like, what do I do? Like, this is before. I mean, if you were to present a chat box today, everybody knows you type into it and you tell it what you want, right?
Yeah.
It's probably powered by ChatGPT now or something like that. But I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's got that experience. But at the time, it was so novel, no one knew how to use it. And we're like, okay,
Wow.
that was not what we were expecting. And there were some other reasons why we pivoted to B2B, but we can get into that. But yeah, so that was our consumer experience, and that ended in ignominious failure, despite the good stuff behind the scenes. And we didn't really change the technology too much. We just applied it to a different space. So then we went to business travel.
Gotcha. Okay. So went into business travel, did that for a while, eventually exited. So I guess looking back now, I mean, first time starting a company, first time being a CTO. I mean, it sounds like you guys had a good, even though you didn't get along well in the car, you figured out how to make it work in a company, it sounds like. Uh, I guess looking back now, like were there any times where there was like a massive failure, a massive mistake? Either on the technical side or really on the product side too. You mentioned the customers not receiving it well. And maybe we can entertain that for a minute, but yeah, like what's the biggest lesson you learned through that experience?
A lot of lessons learned in that experience. I think one of the big ones was I was very happy in my bubble.
Mm,
Um, I was so focused on the technology side of things, on the IP side of things, and I didn't touch the business side of things. And one of the things we learned is that in the consumer space, just the cost of acquisition, right? If we had maybe done a bit more reading into that, we'd been like, you know what? that's going to cost a lot of money. We're not going to be able to bootstrap this. Now we're going to have to raise a little bit more. We should have probably done that. That's one of the lessons in terms of that. The second one is we took too long. I think it's the
You
classic
took too
example
long.
of
You did it in like 6 months.
perfect being the enemy of good.
Yeah.
Well, the core technology was done in 6 months, right? There's a lot of stuff that went around the outside of that, the periphery, right? We had API calls to get information back. That had to be fast. We wanted to do like geofencing for hotels. We needed a good user interface that was intuitive,
I see.
which we thought we had, but apparently not. Um, we had cloud architecture. We wanted to be able to do world demand, right? So we had architected this thing and we designed it and we stress tested it to the point that we could do, 1 million concurrent users for a ridiculously low amount in terms of server costs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put all that together. That took some time to develop, right? Went through various different service level architectures to make that happen. So there were some other technical challenges beyond just the core technology side of things. You needed to be able to do change management. Like I mentioned, natural language parsing is a very difficult problem. You don't get it correct 100% of the time. So if you were to, this is not a hallucination problem. This is just simply a open-endedness of language, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. You can't know all the truths. Somebody will say something that you don't understand, period.
Sure.
So if that happens, somebody needs to be able to change something. It's like, actually, I wanted to fly Delta, or no, I meant JFK, not LaGuardia, something like that. You needed to be able to do change management. So that was an extra complication that we had to go and take care of. So there were some challenges there. But to the point of, okay, we've built this application and we spent a long time developing it. And then it goes out into the market and people are like, how do I use a chat box? Probably should have done that maybe 3 months in.
Well, I mean, hindsight's always 2020, and I mean, this is a never-ending problem, I think, of how much do we build, and I do. Maybe these are separate issues because you mentioned the cost of acquisition, but you also mentioned the cost of customer acquisition, and you mentioned basically people not ready for the chat box. Like in hindsight, and actually, it's kind of interesting. I'm dealing with this right now on one of my client projects because we're building a social media platform, but it's not 100% traditional, right? Like we all know how to use Instagram and Facebook, and everybody knows what a like button is. But if you deviate from that norm, even just a little, people get lost very quickly. And if the value, and if you're trying to show the value, right? And the value is a little bit of a new piece of value that people haven't seen before. I guess, did you learn any like real good lessons around that where you showed them the chat box, it didn't work? Like, how do you approach that now if you're building something is maybe a little bit different, it's off the beaten path a little bit, tons of value? How do you approach that in a way to like really get customers engaged, excited, understanding of where that is?
Well, I mean, gosh, that's the golden goose, isn't it?
Well, what did you learn? And you're like, if you were to
the
go back
pioneer,
and do it again, what would you do
the,
differently?
the pioneer gets the arrows, right? I mean, if they're able to weather them, then they get to stake the best land because they get first digs.
Yeah.
So there is such a thing as a first mover advantage, but oftentimes it's the followers that actually pick up most of the market share. At least that's one of the things that came out of some of the studies that we did. It's a bit of a challenge when you have something that's really novel. I'm trying to think, we're not the only people that get that wrong, right? Steve Jobs with his iPhone, right? The people thought that was a toy that wouldn't go anywhere. And now every phone's smartphone, right? So it completely changed things. And that was actually a very revolutionary, intuitive interface that a lot of people didn't get, but even that took some time to really take off or become the norm, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nokia didn't die overnight.
Yep.
I mean, they didn't die at all, but that's not the point.
I know what you mean.
So it's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
In a consumer case, I mean, the intuition there. I'm trying to remember how chatbots became so ubiquitous and user friendly. I almost think it was a generational shift, right? I don't think that it was so much that everybody else got used to them. I think it's just the new crop of people came up and were like, this is how they got exposed to it at a young enough age. They just adapted.
I do think that's certainly part of it. I do think when you're crossing lines, well, okay, maybe that's part of maybe that's part of a nugget of wisdom here is that like if you're doing something new, don't try to sell the new thing to all the old dogs, meaning, right? Like even your travel app thing, like if your target customer is retired 60-year-olds trying to play golf somewhere, hitting them with this brand new interface, brand new technology, built as if it was for, an exploratory 12-year-old is probably a mismatch in the UX, the branding of the app. So definitely I think that being very aware of like the curiousness of your own audience and kind of what you're about to bring forward can make a big difference in just how you position it and the kind of solution that you're building. And I was kind of thinking about what you just said about like, well, how did the chat box become a thing in the first place? And I do think it was very organic because, Web 1.0 is a bunch of these like HTML sites. And as soon as you start having these sites come online, mostly used by a bunch of college kids and shortly after college kids, there was this immediate need for search. And so you've got Ask Jeeves, you've got, Netscape, you've got these sorts of technologies that are trying to solve this problem. People are recognizing it, and then boom, Google hits the scene, right, with a single search box that actually works well. And that happened, I don't even know when they first came out. I mean, that was 26 years ago, more than that, right? And
Were they early 2000s? I thought that's really mid 2000s.
mid 2000s, okay. I don't
I
I
don't
was
I
I
don't
was
actually know.
I was young enough at that point in time where I wasn't paying attention to that kind of
That,
details, right?
that's a
But
lazy question. There's the internet. You can find out really easy.
yeah, they can. And anybody listening is probably like, wow, these guys don't even know their stuff. It's like, whatever. It was when I was young. It happened, right? And I was a user of it, right? But I guess I'm just thinking, I mean, that came a full, couple of decades before the Chat GPT box. So, I mean, the stage had been set, I think, for a long time, kind of leading up to what
But
we
still, like you think Google back then versus Google now, right? Google back then, it was still very much you put in some keywords and looked it up differently than other people did.
100%.
But you still had to scroll through pages of results to maybe find the one that you're actually looking for. And nowadays, you can ask it a question, and then there's like an AI thing that just like gives you
Mm-hmm.
an actual answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
With sourced links, and then you've got the search box if you want to continue to go down and find links.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole experience is radically different today.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's really a good insight is just kind of being aware of the technical appetite and literacy of your target customer. And then is there anything else around the cost of customer acquisition that you can share as far as just lessons learned, things that you would do differently? I mean, I know it was a long time ago, but um, things that you still think about today that you're applying to the current stuff that you work on.
And we definitely did market segmentation. Like we definitely understood there were different classes of traveler. And the low cost people that didn't really care about anything but finding the lowest ticket, like to them, they would spend hours going from website to website to save $5, right? And that was what their time was worth to them.
Mm,
Okay, fine. Being able to do something in 10 seconds and not have to worry about searching a gazillion websites and finding the best, most optimal deal, probably not the product for them, right? So we weren't really worried about that segment. We were worried about the people that were time conscious, that had complicated itineraries, that wanted to do things with their friends, like plan a spring break trip,
right.
something like that, right? Again, we were the users trying to eat our own dog food and basically say this
Mm,
was the case that we had. We're in the car, we want to go do something, we want to talk to our phone and have it booked. And we want to make that simple. That was actually a much more of a thing in business travel than it ever was in consumer travel. And most people, consumer, they go to one place, fly back, right? They go to a destination. They're not doing crazy trips. So we were
right.
demonstrating this crazy technology, and I guess it didn't really land. But
Mm, gotcha.
um, you were competing with Kayak, Expedia, Trivago, Hotels.com, all these things,
Yeah.
and they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to retain customers to come back. And we're a startup, no, on a bootstrap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't tell you how much we raised, but I mean, it wasn't that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll kind of go back to something you said earlier, which was, you're very happy in your CTO bubble
Totally.
and going from uh that company to the next one, BoxComplement. You had your CTO, or sorry, you close out the previous company, you move on to the next thing. You're now a CEO at BoxComplement. With that, I guess number one, give us a quick sketch on what was BoxComplement, and then number two, kind of what that transition was like, and how did it go growing into that CEO role there?
Well, that's going to be very interesting history in the sense that everything went crazy because this was 2020
2020. Okay.
and
Yep.
going into 2021. So it's
Yep.
just like we had the COVID, we had like, we talk about timing, right? Like business travel just disappeared.
Mm,
But, now your box complement was a much simpler problem, right? It was a much smaller deal. We're doing financial trading. Effectively, we're finding reversal signals. We're taking a particular approach to that. And we just had to automate a trading strategy that I'd used quite successfully while I was in college. And I had my partner, which mentor up in Dallas, and we were going to basically create this trading system and then try to sell that to a hedge fund or something like that.
okay.
Um, CEO, I knew nothing different, and I didn't do anything different. Um,
So you didn't
I
learn your
was
lesson.
I did not learn my lesson. I was very focused on building out the technology. I was developing. I was coding.
Yeah.
I was making sure that everything worked, um, and I was outsourcing to my partner the marketing and like the outreach to people that would be doing all of that stuff. And I didn't want any part of the business. I just wanted to
Mm,
build the thing.
yeah.
That's where I felt comfortable. And well, shocking. Nothing happened there either.
Mm. You know, I feel like that's actually it makes me think about some advice that I got early on in my career is they kind of said, "Hey, lean into your strengths." And I think that and this is at a time when we're like hiring kids out of boot camps, coding boot camps, and like they really don't have like a PhD background in computer science, but everybody can JavaScript now. And so we're like throwing these kids into, go build React widgets. Um, and so it's kind of like, hey, like that's what lean into your strength, add value. And I do think that's good advice for the start of whatever you're doing. But especially as entrepreneurs and everything, it's like, look, if you're going to be in any sort of leadership role at a company, or if that's what your desire is, yeah, you might start the first 3 to 6 months just kind of focusing on your strengths, but then you have to take a step back and just look at what does this company need? I
Yep.
don't care if I'm qualified or not. I don't care if it fits within my box that I put myself in, back in school or whatever. Being able to kind of step back and look at what's truly needed, and if there's nobody else really fitting that slot, you just go start adding to it. You just go start contributing whatever value you can. Even if it's super novice, messy value, it's better than nothing. And
Mm.
and I think kind of having that open-mindedness and perspective in the businesses that we run, in BoxComplement, like being able to sort of detach and look at, whatever things you were missing, may have helped you get over and even to your point, connecting the point in your first one too about you guys being so focused on the technology that we really didn't think about.
Mm.
We didn't think enough about the fact that users we're about to provide a new user experience that is like pretty unknown to people. And we might need to do some like market research or, in-person testing or whatever to think about those things.
And in our defense, like we had maybe a very strange background going into the businesses, which was we only ever had to build the technology,
Mm,
right? So, I mean, I wasn't involved with this because this was like in the early 90s. I was like 3. But my father had a scheduling patent, which he sold to Microsoft, right? It was a There was no beta, there was no client, there was no pilot project. There was just a
mm,
scheduling algorithm, and they did a demo on a project of 100,000 tasks, and they did it in 2 seconds instead of 26 hours, and poof, it was acquired. In the
okay.
commercial airline space, again, we didn't have customers. We had an amazing technology. We were able to demonstrate it, and it attracted all the attention. And it's like we built it, and they came.
Mm,
So with the consumer one, and then with bulk complement, that was a different sort of situation where you couldn't just build it and they would come. You build it and sell it, and you know educate people about it because you are doing something that's very new, very different.
great
So
point.
that was
Great
a bit of a
point.
learning curve for us in some respects, I would say.
That's such a great point too. So Part of what I hear you saying there is, past successes are not necessarily a predictor of future successes, especially with because yeah, it sounds like you guys were sort of changing industries in some of these things. It's like we went from deep, highly technical airline industries to let's build a consumer travel app. Like the technology underneath that might be super similar, but the application, the rollout, the cut, like those things are a lot different, and so it can be very challenging to adapt to those other environments. Let's ask this before we get all the way to what you're working on now. Same question as earlier. What's the biggest learning that you take from BoxComplement? Like, what's the biggest thing you can see now? Like, okay, I can see how that went wrong, and I know how to correct that going forward.
I think it was not changing or not evolving into the position, right?
Mm,
I sort of saw myself as mathematician, technologist. I do patents. I do innovative technology. That's what I
mm.
develop, and somebody else handles the business. And the two times that I've tried that, they didn't work. Um, so I walked out of that, and with a little bit of encouragement, I basically, took a decision to educate myself on the business side of business. So
Okay,
I
talk
spent
to me about that. What did that education look like?
it looked like the Macomb School of Business at the University of Texas is what
There you
that looked
go.
like.
There you
So
go.
at a very tender and old age, for an undergraduate, because I didn't I dropped out to start um, the Amgen technology. I didn't actually finish my degree. I was 1 year away from graduating. Uh,
My
anyway,
man.
so I basically started back from square zero and got accepted into McCombs as a transfer student, which was a God ordained miracle.
Nice.
And took courses in management and managing people, finance, accounting, all the good stuff. And I think I got a heck of a lot of it, marketing of innovations, right? Definitely in kind of in my wheelhouse of things. And I think having been through the failures, I probably got more out of that undergraduate than anybody else.
Without a doubt.
So I was able to really see, oh yeah, that's how you do things. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, yeah, I don't think we did that. Maybe we did. I don't know. Like I wasn't involved in that conversation. That doesn't seem too familiar. And definitely with the box complement stuff where I was involved in everything, I'm like, yeah, I didn't do that.
Mm,
So I took a hiatus from startup to go back to school, if you will, and just not brush up on, but at least develop enough internal confidence that when I started the next company and I was stepping into a role as CEO, I was going in with, okay, I've got a business degree and I've got a technical background, and I'm going to be able to synergize these two things together and change the world.
awesome. Awesome. Well, tell us about that then. So what's your current title? What are you working on now? Tell us how you're changing the world.
I'm chief cook and bottle washer at a company called Chiron Medical Technologies.
Chief
Um,
cook and bottle wash. He went from CEO, got a business degree, and then said, "No, I'm chief cook and bottle washer."
well, I've got a million and one hats on, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that expression, easy as motherhood and apple pie. It's really not easy. Um, so I'm the CEO and the founder, um, and I'm sticking to that. And I've brought on really good CTO and COO that are managing the technology development. So for the first time, I am actually just saying, okay, I'll help out with systems architecture, but I'm not going to be involved in the development of this project. I'm not
Yeah.
looking at code. I'm not writing it. I'm focused on, okay, what is our market? How are we going to approach that market? What are distribution channels going to look like? How much money do we need to fundraise? Who's going to be on the team? How do we hire them? Do we need to fire them? And yes, I'm the number one author, primary inventor on the patent over there, the top one. That's the one that's Chiron's using right now.
Okay.
But it's definitely, yeah, different role, very different experience. And
Yeah.
test saturation doesn't even begin to describe my life right now.
It's a lot, man. It's a lot.
And what we're doing is we're bringing, again, systems theoretic application to the problem of natural language processing and clinical reasoning. And there are a lot of problems with that right now. Most people, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences to the consumer travel application. Both require natural language parsing, right? When you go to a doctor and you've been going to a doctor for the last 10,000 years, I mean, nothing really has evolved. You tell them a story, the physician parses that story against their training and medical experience, So what have they learned? What have they seen? Extract the relevant information, and hopefully they've seen it before and they can prescribe a treatment. And 10,000 years ago, they'd shake a stick or two. 200 years ago, they'd bleed you. And today they send you for a battery of tests, and then we have all kinds of other synthetic interventions, drugs, surgeries, whatever the case might be. And once you come to a diagnosis, if you're lucky, you get a good doctor. He's seen it before, or he's inquisitive and he asks the right questions, and he does his research. And if you're unlucky, you find someone who's traumatized in residency, and whatever symptom you exhibit is that one case that you can't get over, and you hop around from physician to physician until either you get better or you end up in the emergency room.
Right.
And then there's the clinical reasoning component, and that's just an incredibly complicated problem right now. One, there's just such a rapid advance in medical information and knowledge, and no physician can possibly keep up with it. I think they're given 90 minutes a week to keep up to date on the latest publications, right? That's ridiculous. You've got 5,000 publications a day that you need to read in order to stay up to date with the pace of literature. And the cast of doctors that are retiring, that your general practitioners, like the ones that delivered me, that did everything, they're retiring, and the people that are coming in are much more focused on the specialties, right? Their knowledge, such as it is very deep and not very wide. And it's not like they're not in demand. It's just that they can't possibly know all the different comorbidities and entanglements that happen in the human body. You come in with an eye problem, and you're an eye doctor, you're going to look for an eye problem. If you don't find one, nothing I can do for you. The fact that it could be a brain tumor or something like that, putting pressure on an ocular nerve, doesn't even enter their, calculation.
Yeah. Is this going to replace the doctors, or is this going to enhance the doctors? And if it's enhancing them, how do you see that flow?
Yes, it's an enhancement, right? It's if you think about it, it's like an angel on their shoulder, someone that's helping, making sure they don't overlook things, or they don't skip things. It reads all of medical literature, and it constructs a doctor's brain with all of the connections that we find in the literature, and all the treatments and all the prognoses and all the workup protocols and all of that. And if you are a patient and you come in and you start describing your symptoms to that physician, our doctor is listening alongside the one you're actually talking to. And we have questions. Right? It's like, well, you can have one of these 4 very serious conditions, or you may just need to drink more water. How do you do the differential, right? That's a really important thing. And if you don't have the training, maybe you're mid-level, right? And you're in a rural setting and you're not a doctor. And a lot of people, the primary point of care is actually mid-level. How do you do that differential diagnosis, right? You have to call a doctor. Well, or you have to refer it out of the system. And that means that the patient's going 4 or 5 visits before they begin therapy. Meanwhile, they're going to be presenting with increasing acuity, right? As they don't get better, but they deteriorate. And sometimes that damage is irreversible. So you want to treat them at the place that you can as soon as you can. But for that, you need to be able to read medical literature. You need to be able to read the patient case study as it's unfolding. And you can't just rely on the doctor to prompt the system with the correct questions, because if they don't know what they're looking at, or they don't know what to ask, your ChatGPT is going to be useless to you, right? Or your equivalent, whereas relying on the doctor to ask the right question and prompt it properly. So we're there for when they don't know what to ask, or when they do know what to ask, but maybe they actually forgot about something really important.
Yeah. That's actually, I was just on a phone call yesterday with another CTO friend of mine, and just talking about one of the problems with AI is, back to your philosophical roots, is, if you don't know the right question to ask, you have zero chance of getting the right answer, right?
That's one thing. The other thing is that whereas our construction is a synthetic a priori construction and a Kantian tradition, sorry to get all philosophical on you guys. AI is very Humean, right? Or Hobbesian. I got to remember which one it is.
Okay.
Look it up on the internet.
Meaning what?
Meaning that it doesn't know anything it hasn't experienced or seen.
Right.
Right. So the whole idea of an a priori, which by definition means before experience, right? If you know your Latin, it doesn't have that. It can't. It's entirely reliant on its training data. But then you get into a different problem, from a business problem, which is, again, taking off my technical hat for a moment and putting on my business one. All of these technologies and all of these companies, they all use the same technology stack, which is agentic AI or large language models or some combination of those. And they're all token based in terms of how do you measure what these things do? It's based on tokens, right? How do you do your pricing models? It's based on tokens. So they cannot offer a true SaaS platform to their customers because their costs scale with their usage.
Sure.
The more it's used, the more expensive it is, and they're on the same infrastructure as everybody else who's creating AI videos of their cat.
Yep.
So you've got all kinds of demands on the infrastructure that you're competing with. You have all sorts of limitations on that: energy consumption, water consumption. It's not great for the environment. There's a whole host of problems with it. But then, based on the way that they do and then they're passing these tokens back and forth between all of these agents. Remember, they don't keep state. They don't have they have to pass the whole conversation. Like when you have the conversation with ChatGPT, right? It reads everything from beginning to end. And then they have methods which compact that in a way so that it doesn't completely blow out of scale. But if you're in a medical setting, you're not going to do that.
Right.
I mean, that's incredibly dangerous because if you, especially with these kinds of black boxes where it goes into the neural nets and you have no idea, because at the end of the day, it reduces to a probability function, right? What's the next best token? In accordance with the training. It has nothing to do if it's true, if it's relevant or anything like that.
Right.
So you get all kinds of hallucinations and problems, and you start changing words in the summary. Well, I mean, who knows what you're going to get at the end of that? So it's very dangerous to try to do that. And in the conversation that we've had in the last hour, now granted that's a lot longer than a patient case study would take, but I mean, if we were just to take a 15-minute conversation snippet of what we're doing, is probably 2.5 million tokens. And that doesn't even take into account the literature that the agent's going to go and extract from its RAG and knowledge graph. And what does it extract from the RAG and the knowledge graph? It extracts a little bit of information. Is it relevant? Oh, no, neither do you. And then it just balloons out of cost, right? So it can cost $60, $100, $200 per encounter on the processing side, but you can't charge that, especially when you have like 23% of hospitals that are underwater. So they have a serious cost problem and a hallucination problem, which structurally they cannot get away from, which means very hard time trusting the results of your machine learning based models. And then we come along and we can do, again, 1 million concurrent users for $250,000 a month, which you cannot do on any other technology platform or technology stack.
Right.
We cannot hallucinate, and we do it in a fraction of the time.
And I did not get any kind of degree in math, so I don't know the technical details of all that you're saying, but this very much resonates because any of you guys who have listened to any other legitimate podcasts out there in the tech space, one of the things that we've heard that I believe is that AI, the way that we see it right now, all the CEOs are all selling their own product, right? So you got to take everything they say with a little bit of a grain of salt. But like you're saying, Jonathan, it's all fundamentally a predictive model based on how it's trained. And if we actually want to get to the next phase beyond what we have today with AI, because it really is just, let's throw more microchips at it. Let's throw more compute at it. And it does help, but it has a ceiling because of the fundamental way that it's built. Whereas what I hear you saying, what the other podcasters have said is, look, this is going to change once we have, like, the true step function is going to be when there's fundamentally a new technology, a new approach to this problem. And part of what I hear you saying is, like, this is a new approach. What you're doing, the way that you're organizing that data, the way that you're overlaying your algorithms on top of it is fundamentally a different approach than what all the other AI systems out there are taking. Yeah.
And that's what we've done successfully for the last 30 years, right? In the project management space, we went from 26 hours to 2 seconds. And that's from applying a different mathematics and a different structure to solving the problem. In the commercial airline space, from 12 weeks to 12 minutes.
That's awesome.
In the consumer application, still that technology has a better output in terms of its natural language and scheduling and consumer choice modeling than anything that exists today. And that technology is nearly 12 years old, 14 years old. And we're doing the same thing.
Super cool. Super cool.
It's a different paradigm. And it's going to be fun. I mean, we're going up against giants, but I mean, that's fun.
Yeah, but you got more than just a little stone in your sling. So from what I can tell, I'm super excited to see how Chiron Medical grows and what you guys end up doing. Maybe one final question before we wrap up here is, I mean, based on what you're describing, what's stopping you guys from going outside of the doctor's office? And I think of WebMD, right? And I feel like WebMD always has a two-sided coin. It's like lots of information, but it's almost too much and the layman can't organize it. And you go look and you're like, well, I must have cancer and I'm about to die, like no matter what the symptom is, right? Is there any kind of consumer application you guys are thinking about?
Not at the moment. I mean, we fit very nicely in a clinical decision support role.
Yeah.
That's also an FDA designation, by the way. So it just means that, they're, if you, first off, doctors have a duty to you, right? If something goes wrong, you have someone to talk to. Um,
Sure.
it's not just about liability, though. I mean, there is a certain amount of intuition and experience, right? You may just have an exceptional doctor, right? And the idea is not to replace them; it's to augment them and to elevate, right? Basically, we're trying to tech enable lower trained, lower costing resources to have a wider scope of diagnostic practice,
Mm,
right? So that your doctors and your specialists are able to practice at the top of their license,
mm,
right? So like our model, for instance, one of our most, one of the best use cases, like if you think about specialty care, right? You've got rheumatological problem, you have an ophthalmological problem. You can be waiting 3 to 6 months to see a specialist, right? It's a serious problem. And if you got one of those kinds of diseases, like that damage you're not getting better from, right?
mm,
It's irreversible. And a lot of time that those specialists spend, like 2 or 3 visits, is doing the workups and the diagnosis for
mm-hmm,
you first before you
mm-hmm,
start therapy. So if you're able to take an app like an NP, a PA at your local hospital or local primary care clinic, or even at the specialty clinic, but it's a primary care physician um, in that role, not primary care, but like intake. And
mm-hmm,
that person is able to do all of those workups properly and actually come to the correct diagnosis and present that specialist with a ready worked up case that they can start
mm-hmm,
therapy on visit number one. Not only does the patient get seen faster, not only is the quality of care better, but the specialist gets to replace a consult with a therapy, which
yep,
is better for him or her
yep,
and better for the clinic. And we have a massive shortage of doctors. I was at the health conference in Las Vegas in October, and they're saying the linchpin issue right now is that we have a population of doctors that can see 2,000 patients a year, and they need to be seeing 7,000 patients a year. That is not a human problem.
mm,
You cannot solve that. You cannot possibly increase the provider throughput by 3x when they're already burnt out and retiring because they're seeing too many
yeah,
people. So
yeah,
you need different solutions. It's going to be tech enabled or it's going to be tech replaced. And I don't think we're at
mm,
tech replaced yet. So our job is to enable those lower resources. And I don't mean that pejoratively, by the way.
right, right. No, not at all. I think what I hear you saying is actually a very common, um, how do I say, like the right path for AI, meaning, the more we can use AI technologies like this to do the low value efforts, and again, I don't mean that pejorative either, but right, the things that are simple, the things that are straightforward, intake, questioning, right, building the case, as it were, and then really that's allowing the specialists to spend more time providing the higher value of their specialty. And I could even see that, like you said, like they're required to do all this training, keep up to date with all these things. And it's like, it honestly sounds like a good world to kind of basically like, hey, I don't need to know all of the general knowledge. I just need to know enough of it to kind of focus on my specialty, right? And just be able to really just focus down and advance my specialty that I add value to, and then allow something like Chiron Medical to kind of take care of like the wide breadth of knowledge and kind of help funnel people in the right direction. As part of what I hear you saying. I go to the eye
Yeah,
doctor, but if the
just
system
as
can help me
appropriate.
very quickly funnel to the right place, to the right specialty, that's just efficient. That's efficient for everybody.
Well, it's efficient for everybody. That your referrals get worked up right there. The patient gets seen. Different communities have different challenges in terms of access to care. There's 100 million Americans that are in a primary care desert. You have
Mm,
a shortage of 180,000 physicians.
mm,
Like it's a very serious problem that needs to be solved in a technology enabled way. One that
absolutely.
does not hallucinate, that only works off medical truths, right? A lot of it's data from Reddit. I don't know that we want to be making medical decisions around wrappers there. Some of the other companies are definitely, doing better in terms of their sourcing. I know that Obed Evidence, for instance, they use only medical literature, peer-reviewed stuff. I mean, that's at least reduces some of the issues. But I think they've spent and raised like $700 million to build their platform, right? So
Mm,
it's like
wow.
incredible, like the costs to operate and to construct
Mm,
any sort of machine learning solution around here are just astronomical and probably beyond most of the customers' ability to pay at any kind of profitable margin.
yeah, yeah. Jonathan, it's been a great discussion. I really appreciate the time. Who are you looking to connect with? If somebody's listening, who do you want reaching out to you?
And we'd love to talk to some angels. that are excited at the prospect of bringing AI to differential diagnosis and workups. And that's pretty much, where we're at in terms of our bottlenecks.
Awesome. Well, if there's any angels listening, I might actually have a referral for you. We'll chat about it after the show. Again,
Grateful.
man, thank you so much for coming online and appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody learned what not to do from my past.
It's a learning process, If every day we learn a little bit more, then we're headed in the right direction. All right. Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Cheers.